remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's safe to say this is the other hearing this morning. And not only that, I'm glad to see that all the witnesses testifying today are people I know for sure care about privacy. I think it's historic that it's an all-woman panel this morning. But again, thank to each and every one of you of trying to advocate on these important issues. Cyber Monday was just a couple of days ago, and it set a record $9 billion in sales and an increase of 19% over last year. For the first time ever, it was $3 billion that came from people using smartphones to make those purchases. So during the peak hours between 11 p.m. and midnight, 11 p.m. Eastern time and midnight, consumers spent an average of $11 million every minute. So it's not just Cyber Monday that's reminding us, because we all know that we buy groceries, fill prescriptions, pay bills, connect to home devices, to the internet, apply for loans, stay connected with family and friends and social media, and so much more of our lives are lived online. Which means more information is shared, which means deeply, sometimes personal information is shared, and that information can be used to be targeted or to exclude consumers, to be sold, or even worse, it can be stolen. And that's why we're here today, because we want to protect consumers' privacy rights. We believe to do that, you need strong enforcement and mechanisms to make sure that those rights are protected. The risks that we face online are real. We know that companies today are using ads that might be only for the purposes of targeting what they think is a correct population, young men, to work in software, but others can see those ads as discriminatory or not making themselves available to what information is out there on a job. Google's Nest camera was involved in an alarming situation where a hacker was able to break into a couple's baby camera, shouting obscenities, and before they were able to disable the device. A woman in Portland, Oregon had her private conversation sent by Alexa device when it went rogue to a colleague. And then, of course, there's the huge issue of marketed and stolen information, social security numbers, login information, driver license, passports, all now going in the thousands of dollars on the dark web. And in fact, in 2005, more than 11 billion consumers have had their information breached. Just last month, the Washington State Attorney General released a report saying that the number of data breaches in my state has increased nearly 20% in 1 year. So that is a matter of our digital footprints continuing to be under attack. It's Congress's job to make sure that Americans are protected and that this information that is in an ever-connected, ever-evolving world is protected. And that is why a few weeks ago, Senators Schumer, Brown, Murray, Feinstein, and myself joined together to talk about a privacy framework, legislation from all of those committees that we think would be important for the milestones, that privacy goals that should be met. Last week, Senators Schatz, Klobuchar, Markey, and myself also introduced the Consumer Online Privacy Act that guarantees new rights to consumers and strong enforcement. As the chairman mentioned, many of our colleagues here, Senators Blumenthal, Senators Thune, Senators Blackburn, others have been involved in these privacy discussions as well, and we welcome everyone's input on how we move forward. The important things that we think should be there is that you should have the right to make sure your data is not sold, that you have the right to make sure your data is deleted, that you have the right to make sure that you're not discriminated against with data, and the right to just have plain old transparency about what is being done on a website. All of these things are tangible and meaningful for consumers. I say they just need to be clear as a bell so that people understand what their rights are and so they know how to enforce them. So today we're here to hear from a group of witnesses that are going to tell us how those issues might be interpreted for the future. But I think the director of the New York Law School's Innovation Center, Ari Ezra Waldman, recently made a statement that really resonated with me. He said, we can pass any laws we want, but if there's no way to enforce them, then what's the point? So today we also have to talk about enforcement, because enforcement is going to be the key to making sure that privacy rights are actually upheld, that the consumer is truly protected. And if we want the consumers to have that protection, then we also have to make sure that there's accountability, that those whistleblowers, that there is cases against abuses that might happen. If your privacy rights are violated, you need to be first able to find out about it, and then you need to have the power to do something about it as well. And that is why we think our strong legislation does so. But I also want to say how much this issue is evolving. Today's Seattle Times features a very large announcement by the Knight Foundation and the University of Washington and Washington State University on this issue of the public being fooled by online manipulation, whether that is news stories, digital forgeries, or fakes. They want to focus on developing research and tools to resist misinformation, promote an informed society, and strengthen the discourse and discussion in America. I'm so proud that these institutions are taking on this challenge and that this kind of national initiative in our legislation with NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology at the Department of Commerce, would be empowered in the legislation we introduced to help with this effort. While we're here today to talk about just some basics in digital hygiene online, the future, though, is this. The challenges we face as more and more misinformation, forgery, things that we can't even detect whether they're true or not, will continue to appear online. We need to build a strong system today in a federal framework that will help us continue to grow for the ever-changing technology future. That's what we're dedicated to. I look forward to hearing the witnesses today and seeing how we can move forward in this important policy area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oh, if I could also just enter into the record a list of organizations, a letter sent to you and I of organizations supporting privacy legislation. And I just mentioned a few others, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, that will be entered into the record at this point.